Good evening. I'd like to call our regular board meeting of the Waterloo Community School District to order, and we'd like to begin this evening with a moment of silence. Thank you, and now please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next we'll read our mission statement. The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community. Thank you all for being here a little early tonight. We're on our summer schedule of 5 o'clock, and so with that, we have a fairly empty room, and I would just want to make sure, is there anyone here this evening that would like to address the board? Other than those folks on the agenda. Too nice a night to be indoors. So, well, with that, then we'll move on to our consent agenda, and it's a fairly lengthy one, so bear with me. I am going to read what is on it this evening. It consists of the minutes of the May 11th, 2015 regular board meeting, personnel appointments and adjustments, bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, the renewal of agreement for technology services sharing with the City of Waterloo, Junior Achievement Memorandum of Agreement for the 2015-2016 school year, the Iowa Association of School Boards 2015-2016 membership dues, the Urban Education Network 2015-2016 membership dues, and the West High School football players to Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. Are there any items that members would like to have, board members would like to have pulled from the agenda?
I'd like Exhibit C, the bills due and paid between board meetings, because I'll abstain from that one.
Great. C as in cat.
Items B, Bravo, D, Delta, and E, Echo.
B, C, D, and E.
Yeah.
Anything further?
Well, I just wanted to get Jane's opinion on F and G.
Okay.
So,
All right. So there we go.
sorry.
That's fine. So can I get a motion on the table then to approve the minutes of the meeting, which is item A, and item H, the West High School football players to Northern Illinois?
So moved.
And a second? Second. And all those in favor of approving those two items on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. We got two items off the agenda. So with that, we'll move to item B on page 6, which is personnel appointments and adjustments.
I move the Board of Education approve the personnel items as listed.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I see under resignations, there's 20 teachers, 12 of which I think are regular classroom teachers. Was this anticipated? Are these late resignations? What's the plan to fill these at this late date?
Of the 39, we have a total as of today of 39 individuals who have retired or resigned, and we've already filled 19 of those 39, and we have candidates for all, but probably 3. This really isn't late. Teachers have until a number of days after they receive their contracts to resign or to continue their continuing contracts. So this is not late at all.
And so
And that's not very many.
And so all these positions will be filled, and none of them are eliminated or anything.
Well, there are 39 that we're going to replace.
Mm-hmm.
There were more resignations and retirements than those 39, but the 39 are the positions that we will be replacing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, retaining, okay.
I mean, most of the graduates, I assume, the new graduates in teaching already have a job. It seems like it's awful late in the in the game in terms of getting new teachers?
Actually, we have a pool of candidates that we have already screened, and so this is what happens in the process. We posted the jobs, and then we do the internal opportunity for people, and then we call off of our list of people who've already been screened and are waiting for positions to fill, because we wanted to go after the rock stars. And we step out on faith and on my experience to say, there will be a position for you. So as we go through that internal process, we get a resignation. I got a resignation today. I talked to the principal. We have to post it by contract. He has someone that he wants to fill that position with, who had done a long-term sub in his building. Principals have interviewed internally individuals who have student taught in their building. So we've got that group, that pool of candidates. And so once we've had the opportunity to let anyone internally move to that position, then I've given him permission to go ahead and send in the recommendation to hire the individual that he wants in that job.
And I would also add too, just for the record, that either fortunately or unfortunately, all districts are behind on hiring this year because of the budget, and so we've been waiting patiently to see what was going to happen at the in the Capitol with the legislature. So when I talk with superintendents, many of them have not filled their retirements or their resignations because they were looking at it as a potential option to cut should that be needed. So, you know, that's the good part. I had actually been called recently by a friend who knew somebody who was looking for a job and said, you know, they're not getting anybody to call them back from a variety of districts. And they said, do you think that it is because they had heard back from the district, but they hadn't been hired yet? And they said, do you think it's because of the delay? And I said, I know it's because of the delay. So.
And there are some districts, many districts, who have not settled their agreements yet, so they can't really issue a contract because the law says the contract has to determine the number of days and what their salary is going to be. Well, if you haven't settled your contract, you don't know what you're going to pay the teachers. But I'm feeling really good about this year. We're moving right along, and it's not, you can tell when there are a lot of things going on, and it's pretty smooth sailing this year.
Bev, I had a question too on that, just since Lyle pulled it.
Oh, sure.
Just, do we do tracking as far as number of resignations per school? Because like here I was going through and like there were 5 or 6 East High, Kitchell had 5, Lowell. You know, it seemed like the predominantly there was those 3 specific schools that had quite a few resignations. So do we track that and maybe reasons why? Or
Yes, we do. That is
Okay.
one of our HR metrics, and it's also one of our goals. And we drill down, we look specifically at years of service and when individuals are resigning or retiring. We look at reasons. We do an exit interview, so we're tracking that. And we also look by building to see if there are climate issues that might need to be addressed. We had an interesting conversation today with some building administrators regarding that in terms of what feedback they're getting in the buildings as to why individuals are choosing to leave, and what feedback I'm getting from the district level in terms of what they're sharing as a reason why they leave. And many of them are because of families moving or fiance or somewhere else.
Gets another job.
Yeah, usually personal.
Thank you.
Anything further? Then all those in favor of approving the personnel appointments and adjustments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We'll move on to item C on page 10, which is bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings. And the recommended motion is the Board of Education approve the bills due and payable and the bills paid between board meetings.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
And just before discussion, I'll abstain from voting on this matter because as an attorney, I represent a client who's paid by one of the bills.
Great. Is there anything further? Any more discussion? Then all those in favor of approving the bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. An abstention?
One abstention.
And chair votes aye. Motion carried. We'll move on to item D then on page 26.
I move the Board of Education approve and sign the memorandum of agreement to continue to provide technology, leadership, network services, and supplemental technology support services to the City of Waterloo.
And a second?
I'll second.
And discussion.
Yeah, I was just curious, is there truly no economy of scale, or are the systems too different, or basically, oftentimes people say, well, if we can just combine services, there's some overall efficiency, and is there any ongoing things that we've, learned that have been beneficial? Just
Sure.
curious.
And let's just say, this is Matt O'Brien here, our technology person, to speak about that, so.
And just for the background for perhaps the boards and certainly for anyone watching at homes, understanding that the item that's before the board tonight is a temporary renewal of the sharing agreement that we've had with the City of Waterloo to provide technology services for a little over 3 years now. It's a temporary renewal because several months ago, we at the district approached the city basically requesting some changes and requesting not necessarily to part ways, but requesting that we kind of relook at where we were at with the partnership and really what that organization needed to move them forward, and quite frankly, the benefits we felt we were getting from it, and looking at what we needed to move the district forward. So at that point, we notified the city and said that we weren't interested in continuing the agreement as it stood right now, but we were absolutely open to existing partnerships down the road in IT or otherwise. So that resulted in the city having a posting for a director of technology position, which for all intents and purposes is to replace me because I've been serving in that role. So the city's been going through that process and actually made an offer to an individual who ended up turning the offer down. So that's kind of that, and just some other processes behind the scenes have created some delays in them getting that position filled. So we certainly didn't want to leave them hanging and without any services. So we offered to extend the agreement basically as is, with just a few minor modifications, mainly to make it into more of a month-to-month agreement as opposed to a long-term contract. So that's what's before you. Mr. Schmidt, to answer your more specific question, which was, I think, towards just the ongoing relationship between the city and whether or not an agreement could be beneficial. Absolutely, we're not at all saying that there's not the possibility of economies of scale. There's not the possibility of synergies. This move shouldn't be taken towards that. What we are saying with this is that we've moved the city quite a long ways, and quite honestly, I'm pretty proud of the progress that we've made in the city the last several years. However, the city really is at a point right now where I think for them to continue to make progress in information technology, they need to actually have a full-time director or a full-time leader on board. Similar with the school district as well. Quite honestly, I've been frustrated just feeling that I haven't been able to just use the attention that I've really felt both organizations have needed. So this is going to set us up in that, and I believe it's going to be better for both organizations to set us both up for success, both on the city side as well as the district side. We've expressed to the city that we're still very much open to continued partnerships, and the city has acknowledged that them hiring an IT director on staff is really the first step of that, and then after that person is on board, are going to have to take a look at their operations and determine whether they want to add more staff to sustain really what we've been doing for them, or whether they're interested in continuing to partner with either us or another organization to kind of fill those gaps that they definitely will have after this agreement as it is right now kind of parts ways. So we just didn't feel that it was really fair to the city to make decisions in terms of reforming an agreement with the Waterloo schools without having an actual IT director on board, since it would be that individual's operations to run. So depending on what that person brings to the table and levels of expertise and the areas that they're able to serve in, and depending on just how that turns out with the city, we may or may not be bringing another agreement to you to continue some sort of partnership. It just won't look the same as it does right now.
But the systems are enough different. I know the school system, like the financial system, is pretty specific, I think, and the city's probably is too. But in terms of overall help desk or overall data storage, is there, sometimes there's just not.
Yeah, so I guess the short answer to your question of how different it is in some ways we've actually taken a number of steps to standardize things, and actually the city's a little bit ridden on our coattails to us at the district negotiating pricing with vendors, which obviously we have larger buying power here that then they've been able to take advantage of that. We've standardized certain things in terms of storage. I will say though, the city, we're talking about the city of Waterloo as if it was one entity, and it is, but it also has a lot of very, very diverse departments. So certainly there's some applications, which I think are what you were hitting at. There's certainly applications that all departments have in common, like you said, their ERP system or their finance system, which is kind of what you hit it at, which yes, is different than the districts. But each department has some very specific needs as well. You know, when we're talking about diversity, anywhere from arts to the airport to sportsplex to city hall, there's a lot of different needs there. So quite honestly, in terms of hardware and infrastructure, we've done some standardization, so there's some commonality. But in terms of the application or the specific functional needs, it's very, very different, and that's been very challenging for us to feel like we're serving our diverse needs here, quite frankly, and they're even more diverse needs there when it comes to those pieces.
Okay, well, thank you for your work the last few years. I think it's been a good.
It's been an interesting ride. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think we're just at the point right now where it's natural that we look at where we've come and look at where both organizations need to go moving forward. So I think it's a natural time to do that. It was certainly no ill feelings either way, and certainly we will continue to work together, whether there's a formal partnership or not in this area.
And thank you for being willing to extend it. I appreciate that,
Yeah,
Matt. I
of
think
course.
it's a great good faith effort on everybody's part.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we certainly
we
don't
all
wanna leave them
appreciate that.
hanging, so, yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're okay with, as far as just extending it month by month? I know it was a bit frustrating sometimes, like you said, trying to give your best to both.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Obviously, ideally, I would love to have one less thing to worry about at night, one less call to get on the weekend, you know, that type of thing. But the reality is I think we all care very much about the city of Waterloo, you know, the city, not the city as an entity, but our city. And obviously, the right thing to do is not to leave them hanging and to make sure that we help as much as we can through any sort of transition. So I definitely want to do that. Yep.
And I'm glad you wanted to stay with us.
Yeah, we win.
Yes.
No question, definitely.
Yes.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Anything else for Matt? Then all those in favor of approving the renewal of the agreement for technology services sharing with the City of Waterloo, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. Takes us on then to item E on page 35. And the recommended motion is the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement between the Waterloo Community School District and Junior Achievement of Eastern Iowa. Can I get a motion?
Also move.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, and discussion.
First question is just concerning the scope here. It's 4th through 8th grade generally. Is that the?
Yeah, actually, junior achievement is really a PK-12 thing, and so what they do is they charge us for a portion of the students each year. And so we actually are pretty active. I know my kindergartner had junior achievement this year, as did my second grader. So, so it does span the whole thing. But they do it the way that they charge. They only charge for certain grade levels, but they do a comprehensive program. And what junior achievement has expanded, probably in my opinion, the most in the past few years, Lyle, was is at the high school, and really tapping into the entrepreneurship programs. And so I have already visited with them about some of our business programs, especially in the areas of career and technical education, because they have stock market programs. They have all kinds of business programs that they offer to us. And in essence, it's at no cost because they don't happen to be in one of the grades that they charge for, but it really is a comprehensive cost for a PK-12 program.
So is this it's not really an elective, it's just part of the curriculum at,
Yeah,
In-
it does have some.
even in high school, or is the high school portion more of an elective?
It would, in many cases, it is part of an elective course curriculum, but the one thing that is comprehensive across the whole thing, and Charles could talk more about this as well too, but the 21st century, the Iowa Core has a section, it's the literacy and the math, and, but it also has the 21st century skills, of which financial literacy is one of them. And so they have really, JA has really worked to make sure that their curriculum is a direct match to the requirements of the law. So we might offer it through an electives course, but it is a requirement. And so it does exist in some of our required courses, because it's not just every child has to have it. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have, a required to have.
So then who in our district reviews the curriculum and I guess monitors the effectiveness?
Yeah, we work in partnership with JA to do that. They actually have a curriculum committee that looks at that, of certified teachers, some of our teachers, but they actually have paid teachers that are on staff with them. And so they are writing the curriculum, they are monitoring the curriculum to make sure that it is a direct match. They do have their own measurement techniques that I had written down. I have a meeting with them, with their liaison on Thursday of this week, and one of the questions I wanted to ask was, I want to make sure that we are getting in, because we're getting pretty savvy about the way that we can measure things, and I don't see any reason that we can't also do our independent measurement. You can see on their little cheat sheet, kind of the partnership overview, that they have, in that second set of bullets, I'm sorry, where's the 13, maybe it's the last, I'm sorry, it's the fourth bullet in the top set. Local evaluation results indicate a 13.38% growth in comprehension of the skills and concepts taught. And I've always been really interested in the retention of skills over time. So they measure pre-test, post-test from the start of the program to the end of the program, but I've always wanted to see that those skills permeate, longer. And so that's on my list of questions to visit with them.
So this is JA of Eastern Iowa.
The corridor.
And how does that relate to Iowa in general? I mean, this curriculum is really a national curriculum, isn't it?
Yeah,
So is it modified?
it is. There are, of course, pieces of it that are in at the national level, but they do work with it. If you look on that third bullet, they have worked to make sure that it is aligned to the Iowa Core, but also the Common Core. So they do have Iowa, and we are in the corridor JA, which means that it's Cedar Falls, Waterloo, actually everything around the Cedar Valley, and Iowa City and Cedar Rapids.
So
But there are other JA programs in organizations in Iowa as well.
So JA of Western Iowa would be different than JA of Eastern Iowa?
It would just be the way that they've grouped them for, because they don't have an administrator for every single district, and so they kind of district them together, so there's one regional rep for the various regions. We happen to be in the region, the corridor region, the Eastern Iowa.
Does Waterloo community or Cedar Valley community or have any teachers or administrators that are part of the process of determining what modifications to the national will be?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Done
I'll
now.
ask about that. I'm not sure who from, the Cedar Valley would be on that particular one. I certainly couldn't give you a name today.
Just curious as to, how
Absolutely.
in a hierarchy standpoint it becomes more specific to the individual users.
Right.
I've always thought junior achievement is a wonderful enrichment for the Waterloo School District. In fact, my husband, many, many years ago, he did junior achievement at Edison when it was junior high, and he was in a junior high class, and he was talking to them about stocks. And they did this fun game, and so, it was just something that, where else were they going to get that? So it's just wonderful for people who volunteer with these certain skills and knowledge to come in and take over the curriculum that has been given to them by JA to do.
Well, and that financial literacy piece that's in high school is so, even simple things like balancing a checkbook that so many people don't do anymore, they're still helping that. And I agree with you, Andrea, that is a skill that all kids need to know that.
Right. And
Yeah.
hundreds of volunteers from our community,
Get
in
in the
our classrooms, visiting, working with, alongside the teacher. It's not like the volunteer comes in and the teacher leaves the room. They are
Right.
working side by side. And so it's, a
Right.
great opportunity to partner with.
You've probably taught JA.
Yeah, I've helped with it, but I just wondered as far as the numbers served, we're kind of down about 1,600 from the year before.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure if that's a timing issue, because if you look back, it looked like 12, 13, and 14, 15 were really similar in numbers, and then 11, 12, and 13, 14 were similar in numbers. And so I'm not exactly sure about that. I believe we are participating at about the same level that we always have. So I don't know if that's just a data collection, the timing of the data collection. I'm just not sure about that, but I did wonder that as well. This just came to us today. It's the end of the year report, and so I was not aware that we were, down just a little bit in our participation, and I'm not sure exactly what warranted the 96% participation last year, but that is on my list for Thursday.
For questions. And then on that, would that be like if my student took a different class 3 or 4 times? Because obviously if it's only serving certain grades, that number would have to be repeat students.
No, it's serving all grades. We're just not paying for all grades.
grades.
So
Oh,
it is,
okay.
it is serving PK-12.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that is an
Gotcha.
unduplicated account, unduplicated
Okay.
count.
Yeah, it looks like those 5 programs, that bullet point 5 on page 37, those are the 5 programs that we're paying for, which is the 4th through 8th.
That seems like that seems like a strange way to.
I actually thought the very same thing. Because we have it all across our district in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and we just, they charge in a really interesting way.
Well, those are trademarked.
As the
They're
copyrighted
copyrighted
programs, so that
programs,
might.
so maybe
They
that's
all
what
are,
generate the
they
cost.
all are, they all are copywritten, so I don't know.
Another question for Thursday.
It is, I've got lots of questions for Thursday, so, yeah,
Great. Will you let us know what you find out?
I certainly will.
Great.
And then there's one last question. This investment of $2 million down below the second series of boxes, $2,033,000 in programming in the Waterloo Community School District. Is that the time of the volunteers?
It is, it
Okay.
is. Yeah, because they're giving to us some grade levels at no cost, and so they're calculating in the curriculum, the volunteers' time. There is a bullet up ahead saying that over time they have given almost $1 million in volunteer service. The 6th bullet. So they do track
Yeah.
that. They do track that.
I think, Lyle, you'd be a good candidate. I think you would have a lot to give if you would get into JA.
I'm not smart enough to do that.
Oh, yes, you are. Especially the entrepreneurship,
Yeah, it would be.
starting up a business.
It does sound very interesting.
Yeah, you would be good for it.
We're not trying to put more things on your plate, Lyle, just, yeah, so.
Enrichment for you.
Exactly. Is there anything further? Great. Then all those in favor of approving the Junior Achievement Memorandum of Agreement for the 2015-2016 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Well, we're ticking off the consent agenda here. Let's move on to item F on page 39. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the payment of $11,400 for the 2015-2016 membership dues to the Iowa Association of School Boards.
So moved.
And a second? Great.
Second.
And discussion, I know.
I just wonder, Jane, as far as what is your opinion about the bang for the buck here, as far as, it's not a huge amount of money, but every penny counts, and if you really feel that, personally, I see the UEN being a little more beneficial to us, but just wondering what your thoughts were on the validity of the IASB.
Sure. One thing I have noticed is at the state level, a variety of the organizations have really specialized a little bit, so they're not duplicating services, which is actually a smart way to have a business. And so some of the things that IASB offer, the UEN doesn't, or they have certain people on staff that specialize in certain things. And so I probably use I probably use UEN a little bit more, but not much, because IASB has certain things. For the policies, I always go to IASB. For, you know, for lobbying, I go to both. For professional development, I go to both. And so but it depends on what topic it is, because they really have specialized. And so even though it does seem like, I mean, it's, I guess in respect to all the other amounts, it's probably not a huge amount of money, but it is a significant amount of money, but we use them. And I would, you know, ask Michael to talk a little bit about IASB or UEN, but I mean, a variety of us use them. So if we get a district membership, we all have access.
Yeah, and it is a good tool to compare one to the other and make sure both are saying the same thing and you're not getting, not led astray, but misunderstanding from one point of view. So it is good, and that's what I find from my colleagues, that everybody uses both just to substantiate everything that's going on as of today. Legislation that was approved and nobody knows exactly what it means yet, and the governor hasn't signed it yet, and he may veto something yet, and so we're all sitting there going if, and it's good to have a number of do that. The other issue is, since IASB has been around for so long, there's so many programs that we have used, like policy, but all of our finances come through an IASB system that the state uses. So it's just, and the insurance component, you know, so it's, there's just things that have been built in. But on the other hand, I listen to the ISFIS report every week when it comes out, and it's really good just to hear somebody explain it rather than just have it on paper. So it's good to have both resources when you're dealing with such important issues.
Anything further? Then all those in favor of approving the Iowa Association of School Boards 2015-2016 membership dues, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. We can move on to item G then on page 43. And that recommended motion is the Board of Education renew its membership to the Urban Education Network and approve the payment of $8,500 for the 2015-2016 dues.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Great. In discussion?
Well, you know, the same thing, but I think you both have answered that. But I guess in questioning then, how do these go up each year? Percentage-wise, the membership dues?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the IASB, but I know UEN is exactly the same as last year.
Last year.
There was no increase. I don't, Michael, do you know about IASB? I was gonna look that up today. If it did, usually they try to keep them pretty competitive, and I know UEN is exactly the same as last year.
Anything further on that?
On the UAN, does all 25 pay?
I think the
Those dues.
associates pay.
It's a staggered price, so the original 8 pay the $8,500, and then the associate members that have like up to 5,000, or they have to have at least 5,000 student enrollment, they pay a different price, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think it might be $6,500, but do not quote me on that.
Okay.
It's a little less.
And I assume that comes with maybe a little bit less service, or they're
And
not voting
right,
members, is that
They're
correct?
not voting members.
Yeah.
They don't, they have some of the same services, but not all.
Okay. Anything further? All right, then all those in favor of approving the Urban Education Network 2015-2016 membership dues, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. And that gets us through the consent agenda. Yay. So we'll move on to item I, which is on page 49. And I will have Tara Thomas come forward at this time, and we will get the motion on the table. If I can get to my... And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the diversity plan as presented.
So move.
And a
I'll
second?
second.
And Tara, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanley. So essentially, this is just reinstating for another 3 years the diversity plan that was established, well, approved originally when it was established in February of 2008. So it's a 3-year cycle. So it's come up for renewal with minimal change, no significant changes in terms of the criteria, just updating the language, reflecting the new numbers in terms of our aspects of diversity, and then essentially reaffirming through student services that the clusters that are in effect and have been will be maintained in terms of current enrollment and projected enrollment in the next few years.
So what I found was interesting is our Bosnian population has gone down 2%.
It is an interesting note. We talked about that, and perhaps reflecting the fact that some American-born families now in that ethnic genre would identify as Caucasian. And in fact, through our ELO program, if you're Bosnian, you are technically coded as Caucasian. So from that European descent.
Is there anything else for Tara while we're...
And also on that same note, is it like a, in all diversity plans across the district, that they have switched from specifying out African American, Hispanic, Asian, or Native American to just not? So there's basically 2 categories, Caucasian or non-Caucasian.
We actually decided to change that in light of when you talk about diversity, the immense diversity that now does exist, not just in Waterloo, but in Eastern Iowa in general. Talking to Amy White in ELL, I know we're up to, I believe, over 70 dialects and nearly 40 languages, and Cedar Falls reflecting similar numbers in their population. So it's just really become almost impossible to identify every group accurately. So that was a cleaner way, perhaps, to kind of break up the differences. So it's a good problem to have. We are very diverse.
Yeah, it's great.
In fact, if you look at that number, 47.5 would put us at nearly half of our student population would fall into a category of diversity. So it's a rich opportunity for our students to take that experience anywhere in the world that they might want to find a job.
That's great. Anything further for Tara?
Clarify. Tara, Mike Kinchy had called earlier today just to clarify that those policies that are referred to within the diversity plan, there were no changes to those policies, correct?
Correct, and the policies within this plan are on a similar cycle to our other policies in terms of coming up for review. When those policies come up, they would go through the review committee, the normal process of any policy. And so at this point in renewing the diversity plan, there are no changes in those policies, and they've currently been updated through the process.
Great.
In this, I remember the process we went through before. I thought in the board packet that background information was very helpful, just because there were a number of changes going back to 2000, really I think in 2008 is when we did them all, but it seems to be, the program was tweaked, as it talked about in here again, but it seems to be working well.
Yes, it was nice for me to inherit Sharon's work on that.
There was
She did a lot of the research and writing, so I was able to transfer some of that material to you folks.
There was a Supreme Court case that was talked about in here.
Right.
And this brought
Yeah.
to mind some of the IASB and UEN. At that time, IASB, I think, was in a bad spot, just in general. Very controversial and just a lot of scandal. But at that time, I think the UEN came in because quite a few of the other districts that had desegregation plans at the time were UEN members, so there was some collaboration then going through that. There were some smaller districts that weren't, I think like Columbus Junction, I think Postville, that sort of thing, that had desegregation plans but weren't UEN members. I think they still participated in it, but it brought to mind the benefit of those organizations, particularly the UEN. But
And a couple other things worth noting. We have had a lot of interest from other UEN districts to share our plan, to look at it based on some of the issues they've dealt with that had, they maybe been as proactive as this district. They could have prevented some of the issues from playing out had they been aware of the opportunities that a diversity plan could bring in terms of enrollment. And then the second piece is just, and I know we've shared this with you previously this year, that for whatever reason, perhaps we can't measure it per se with any specifics, but we know that our open enrollment requests are way down from last year to this year by about 50%. And so we'd like to think it's because all of the staff have just been doing a wonderful job of being very communicative with families and trying to work out any issues that come across their lap and hopefully resolve them before it would rise to the level of a family thinking that it might be better for their child to go elsewhere. So
Well, and I think our programming
Right,
has
is great.
increased, you know, so that has
Absolutely.
kept the students here not seeking
Wanna go to
another
school.
district because we don't have the programs to offer. But I do think it's just very interesting to note in this 3-year span that our non-Caucasian population has increased 5.5%, and our Caucasian population has decreased 5.5%. So very interesting in a 3-year span. I mean, I find that fascinating.
Do we have any way to measure the number of transfers in that might occur if we did not have the restrictions that are in this policy?
that's a good question. And we do have requests that come in my experience, it's been a lot of times around transportation and economics. For example, a family will have a daycare provider in the Waterloo city limits. So they're in an outlying area and would like their child to come in so that they wouldn't have to, you know, the convenience of transportation. And what we have to look at are our own internal voluntary transfer options, because I understand a parent perspective. If you were a Waterloo taxpayer and you couldn't transfer your child to another school within the district, the open enrollment plan protects an outside individual from being able to come in and choose a school that a person within the district might be denied access to. So I think it's been a fair way to sort of check and balance the outside enrollment options. And then we also have a case where, you know, you might have, like you say, the signature programs where we have requests for IB. So then there's always the opportunity that way to give Cherise and the folks that work in the special programming an opportunity to have conversations with those families. And people have been really generous with their time of giving people tours or following up and meeting with families who might want more information about a signature program like IB before they go through the open enrollment process.
But we can't accept them.
Yes, we've been able to accept students coming in with International Baccalaureate because it'd be considered a special program that their district doesn't offer.
Okay.
Similarly, we had a student who was able to open and roll out because he wanted to go into an agriculture program that another district offered that we did not. So, I mean, it goes both ways.
Yep. Anything further for Tara? Well, then, all those in favor of, no,
No,
Nope.
sorry.
the next two are. All those in favor of approving the revised diversity plan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Tara.
Now we'll move on to item J on page 72, and we're going to bring Mr. O'Brien back to the microphone. The recommended motion is the Board of Education approve the purchase of 281 HP Pro 1 400 AIO desktops and 56 Dell Chromebook 11s, 2s, at the total cost, I'm not sure what those, 11s, there you go, Chromebook 11s at the total cost of $204,939,080.
I'll so move.
In a second,
Second?
and discussion.
Just a brief background, the board is probably used to me bringing you some sort of a technology purchase around this time of the year. That's what we typically do is in the springtime look at our needs and come up with the plan of what we're going to be phasing over the summer. You all know that we try to operate under a total cost of ownership model for technology, so looking at that obviously looks at both the initial cost as well as the cost it takes to keep the equipment running, and part of that then means that we have a life cycle replacement model as well, where obviously we're ensuring that we refresh our technology and ensuring that it's functional and all those pieces that go along with this. So this year is a bit delayed, quite honestly, due to the budget uncertainties that we've had. Obviously, we wanted to be very conservative in what we were looking at and trying to get the most use of out of our technology as we could. So the numbers this year are actually quite a bit lower than the board has seen in the past. Again, us trying to be conservative. The vast majority of the pieces that we're going to be replacing this year are lab computers. And quite honestly, they're all the same model, that we also will have several hundred of those computers of that same model still in operation within the district. So the plan is that we're replacing some of that model to then pull those computers back, which will then give us parts to hopefully keep the rest of those alive for another year to try to get the biggest bang for our buck out of that model. So again, this is a cycle where the model of the desktops we're replacing, we have probably 400 plus of that model, so we're replacing a little less than half of that, hoping that then that gives us enough to keep that same model going for another year or so. So again, the bulk of this purchase is computer labs, most notably the PBDA labs at the high school is the biggest portion of it. Only exception to that is we are replacing a laptop cart at Hoover, which is due with 2 Chromebook carts. That I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And Matt, let me stand corrected. I said 204 million. I meant $204,939.80.
Wow, that would
I
be
know
an
you said it was a
interesting budget.
smaller purchase than normal, but I don't think we were quite at 2 million before. So, pardon me.
I didn't even catch that. So good.
Yeah, no, there was a speck on my paper, and I apologize. I can't read my decimal points.
Going all
so
out. Computers.
yes. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, "That's not right." So, pardon me. So,
But I found it interesting because I was going to ask you if we had competitive bidding for this, and then I noticed the footnote above. How long are those bid pricings good for?
Yeah, so that's a naturally interesting point just for the public's point of view. What Sue is referring to is we've bid things out in the past. In this case, we chose not to bid. Quite honestly, we saved thousands of dollars by not bidding just because this purchase was a much lower quantity than we've gone out to bid for in the past, and we were able to leverage that bidding that we've already gone out for at much higher quantities, more in the $500,000 plus range as far as the dollar amount. So interesting point to that, Sue. On the desktop side, that model has actually, that we bid previously, is still in production, though we've had some configuration changes go. So when we bid out pricing, I'm very careful to work with vendors and ensure that their bids are not just valid for the big purchase that we're bidding out, but they're also valid for subsequent purchases, because we have small purchases all the time, whether it be from grant or sign-a dollars or various different funds that, you know, we're purchasing 1 or 2 or 12 computers at a time that obviously don't reach the board threshold, but that we're still doing those pieces behind the scenes. So I'm always very careful to ensure that the vendor agrees to not just extend the pricing to the bulk purchase, but for the onesie-twosie purchases. And in this case, because that model still existed, we were able to extend that again this year. Now there's actually some configuration changes, like basically the shell of the computer is the same, but then some of the internal guts, so to speak, are a little bit different. And that actually has resulted, as we've made some changes there, in the price actually being a little bit lower than the price that actually came before you last year's $30 or $40 or so lower. But that pricing is basically good for the lifespan of the computer. In this case, while there's a few minor differences in the specifications, the model is still valid, so we're still able to leverage that pricing, which is good for us.
What's the Google Device Management license give us? That
Sure.
looks like it's mandatory.
It's basically mandatory for someone in our setting such as us. So that allows us to manage all of the Chromebooks. So that gives us a portal that we can inventory the Chromebooks, that we can push out software, that we can push out updates, all of those type of things. We actually, for Windows computers, we have similar licenses that we have to pay to have that computer on our network. We just kind of handle that licensing a little bit differently, where we typically purchase on the Microsoft side those licenses separate from the computer. With the Chromebook side, we bundle those with the actual devices.
Okay, and it's Google who provides that.
Right, so a Chromebook is it's basically running an operating system called Chrome OS, which Google makes, just like Microsoft makes the Windows operating system, so it's the operating system vendor that we have to pay that licensing to. Yep, so it's through a reseller, but it's ultimately to Google, just like we pay Microsoft licensing fees for our Microsoft operating system devices.
Okay.
So do these come with a set of application programs, or is the software, is that separate? Or-
Well, it's an interesting point. So I could give you a very lengthy answer to that question, because obviously it depends on where the device is being used as far as the actual software that's being used with that. The biggies, for example, for PVDA, obviously a lot of that is being used for our online learning programs, which is the board is aware is a separate contract. Microsoft Office, we still have that installed on all of our Windows devices. We're looking at whether we need to have that on all devices in the future, but as of right now, that's installed on all of our devices. That's a separate licensing fee that we've actually already purchased out of Microsoft settlement dollars a number of years ago. So because we're doing this one-to-one swap where we're replacing a computer on our network with a new computer, those licenses can basically carry over. So that's also part of our looking at the total cost of ownership. If we were to net increase that number of devices, then we would have to buy more licenses, but because it's a one-to-one swap, then we don't have those additional software pieces. So the short answer to your question is the only software that's included with the purchase that you're seeing is just the operating system and the mandatory licenses that go with that. But depending on the computers we're talking about, we already have software for them.
Thank you.
Matt, I know you mentioned that this is a regular occurrence, that, this is part of our replacement cycle. Can you say where in the budget this money is coming from to pay for these?
Yeah, you bet. So this is, as Ms. McNally mentioned, a regular purchase that we always budget for, and Mr. Coughlin and I work on every year. This year, we're pretty much all of these purchases are coming from PEPL dollars. That's something that Mr. Coughlin looks at each year, obviously depending on our budget situation, and we try to balance general fund expenditures versus PEPL expenditures for the technology purchases, which were eligible for PEPL, and we're tapping into PEPL for these, I believe.
So great use of our PEPL money.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And that is really important. Without that, quite honestly, these are computers that need to be replaced. So without those PEPL dollars, that would be less money ultimately that we would have available coming out of our general fund that pays for staffing and things like that as well. So it's pretty important that we have those PEPL fundings available to be able to use those eligible purchases, so we're not draining our other funds when we need those.
Great.
So what's the annual amount you need to keep refreshing the hardware and software?
If we were to keep status quo with the number of devices that we have, and we were to maintain a 5-year replacement cycle, which is what we've been endeavoring to hit, and quite honestly, we're typically pushing that more to the 6 to 7 years. But if we were hitting a 5-year replacement cycle status quo, just for devices, so not counting software licenses and maintenance and other things, but just devices, we're somewhere in the 700,000 to 800,000 neighborhood. This purchase is obviously much below that. We have done some smaller purchases, and the board's aware we've done some pilot and some other things that I brought to you earlier this year. Last summer, we took pretty much right around that level. It was over $500,000 purchase. So, and again, we're trying to push the limit with that, so that's why this number is coming significantly below that. But that number I quoted was just to keep status quo if we were to keep that more aggressive replacement cycle, which we try to push when we can.
So it's a third or so of our PEPL money.
I'm sorry?
A fourth?
We get 2.8 million basically a year for voter approved plus the board approved PEPL.
So 25% is needed for technology replacement. Okay, thanks.
Anything further for Matt? Thanks, we appreciate it. All those in favor then of the renewal of the, excuse me, of the technology purchases, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. Move on to item K on page 73, and this actually is just for information only, and I'm going to turn it over to Michael Coughlin.
I think you've got a good segue right into our subject with what is before us as one of our main priorities on a 10-year cycle is that PEPAL funding. And I want to preface all the remarks of saying it is a renewal, use that as a key word, and taxes will not increase. They will remain at the same level that they have been because PEPAL is, the voter-approved PEPAL is just completing its second 10-year cycle through the end of 2017. I am just part of this effort of putting together a PowerPoint to just outline some of the issues with this and the facts and getting it out to the voters to let them know what this is and that the election is coming up. And this has landed in Tara's arena as well, with many things going on in social network and so on. And I'm going to allow her to fill in some of those at the end. I just want to go through the PowerPoint so you can see what's on there. And I will say that this is something that can be changed on a daily basis. If you see something on there that really needs to be said differently, or you need something more on there, please say something, because we can change this on a daily basis almost. So, coming to the Waterloo School website, click on the PEPAL Physical Plant and Equipment Levy section on the main page, and it takes you to this page. And I'm going to leave the rest of this for Tara's explanation, but I'm going to go to the PowerPoint. Right under the seal, it says click here for the informational PowerPoint. And the board has heard this many times over, so I'm going to run through this rather quickly just so you can see what's here, get familiar with it, and if you have particular questions that you want to point out or stop me in the middle and just make a point, whatever is something that you want to do. This is just a summary of what PEPAL is about. When is the community vote? It's Tuesday, June 30th of 2015, so it's coming up in just a few weeks. What is PEPAL? It is a physical plant and equipment levy. It is a special funding determined by local control. It's up to you and the voters, not controlled by the state, any outside organization. It's used to maintain facilities and address different equipment needs. Getting into that a little more in detail, it's to purchase or lease of buildings, equipment, technology that exceed 500 as a single unit or a group. So you've got computers, musical instruments. That's not something that people think of as often. Copiers, that's something we have used it for. If we were purchasing school buses, it can be used for that. It is also to construct schools, buildings, roads. I had this question of why that was in there, of building, and they said, why don't you just bond for that? Well, in a lot of cases, schools couldn't get bonds passed, so they use PEPAL money to do some of their construction, so it is part of that. But it's minor compared to building a full facility or a new elementary or a high school, but it is for some construction. It is to repair, this is what we basically use it for, repair, remodel, reconstruct, or demolish existing facilities, and we'll touch on that in just a minute. And there's also the aspect that you can use it for energy conservation. And just some of the ways that it has been used in Waterloo in recent years. This is probably going back the last 6, 8, 8 years of things that are easily to put our fingers on, that people can remember, identify with it. And as you can see, it goes all over the district in all different ways. Security fencing, elk run playground equipment, science labs, resurfacing the tracks, the middle school parking lot at Central. That was a major expense to do that whole parking lot for Central Middle School plus for Memorial Stadium. The Bunger gym floor, wrestling mats, instrument racks at West and Hoover, if I remember correctly. We also do some significant purchasing or spending through asbestos abatement, as we have been demolishing some of our old buildings. And speaking of that, Irving was funded that way. Logan is just coming up. Orange and Edison are on the near horizon, and Pepple money will be used for that.
Just a comment, I don't know if we're wordsmithing this thing or not, but I think Central Middle School, if you spelled that out, it would maybe avoid
Rather than
confusion.
MS, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you need the MS, like you have Bunger underneath it, and you don't have Bunger MS? Just to be
Yeah,
consistent.
we can be consistent.
And then on the can be used, is that state law? Is that where?
Those are the parameters set up by actually the wording of the ballot. So you can actually restrict your ballot to any of those, but this is encompassing all of those things that are available to be used under Pepple.
But what defined this list?
State code.
State code.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be helpful. In
What the code
parentheses,
number is?
well, no under, again, I don't, but after how can Pebble be used under parentheses, just put state code.
Actually, I think on the ballot that you approved and will be looking at, and it's on the website, I think the code section is stated in that.
And the sections are actually.
But we can put it on here too, just so there's a reference.
So I think it clarifies that people don't think we're choosing how to
Correct.
use it, if they're just looking at it.
Yeah. Good point. What we can't use Pepple for, salaries and benefits, travel expenses, instructional supplies and materials, printing costs, media services, library books, et cetera, and the heating and cooling costs or bus fuel. Those are operational, instructional, operational. Pepple is to maintain facilities and equipment. What are the effective dates? The voted Pepple must be approved by voters every 10 years by a simple majority of 50%. And the current Pepple cycle expires in June of 2017. So a passing vote would extend the voted Pepple from July 17 through June of 2027 on a 10-year cycle. I probably should have had this one first. There are two portions of the physical plant and equipment levy. There's the board approved, that every year at budget time in March and April when the budget is approved, every school board has the ability to levy 33 cents per $1,000 of property valuation to have a Pepple fund, and that's about $900,000 for our district. For the voter approved, which has to be approved by the voters on a 10-year cycle, it can go up as high as $1.34. We have always chosen to be at 67 cents, and that's what the vote is on, again, to remain at 67 cents.
I think with that, if you just put maximum $1.34, because when you put can go as high as,
Okay.
people, I think it's gonna go as high as.
Okay. Good point. So again, this is just stating the two levels. The board approved at 33 cents, generates $935,000 per year. The voter-approved PEPAL at 67 cents generates 1.9 million per year. And that's going to adjust as valuations change. An approval of the PEPAL levy will not raise the current property tax rate. It will.
Yeah.
I underlined it. Okay. I'll put it in the heading too. Okay. So just saying that this would remain at the same tax rate as it has been since 1999. Now this is interesting in my mind of looking at all the UENs and going, okay, it's pretty easy to see all of the UEN districts. And I did it by size of the dollars that is coming out of the 33. So just about everybody has the 33 except Cedar Rapids, who has 26 cents, which I don't know why they were at that. But then it's interesting as you look, the voter approved is quite different. That Des Moines at 63 cents and Iowa City's at 134 and Davenport's at 97. Cedar Rapids just approved $1.34, so they will be next year. Dubuque 67, Waterloo is currently at 67. Sioux City has not been able to pass this. Council Bluffs at 67 cents, and Cedar Falls, our neighbor, is at $1.34. So you can see that being much smaller size of enrollment, Cedar Falls is actually collecting more in voted PEPAL dollars than we do. So it's always an interesting concept to look at comparisons. And as you would notice, and I didn't get into this, that instructional or the income surtax can also fund some of this, but that has to be part of the vote. And through the Finance Committee, through talking about it, board vote, we chose not to put that into the mix for PEPAL, to put the income surtax. It is in the instructional support levy, and we'll talk about that next year at budget time. But for voted PEPAL, it is not part of that equation, even though it could be. And you notice that none of the UEN districts are choosing that path as well. But there are some that do have it for instructional support.
Is the maximum income tax levy, is that the combination of both PEPAL and?
Yes, 20% is the highest you can go total.
And that would include both?
Right.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying from a taxpayer's point of view, that column really does nothing for me. It just says to me there might be more surtax dollars I'm going to have to pay. I mean,
Not with this vote.
I know, but I'm just saying, take it off completely, that column,
okay.
because there's no value to it because you have a line across and you're adding another title that people don't know what that is.
Okay.
What's income surtax dollars? You know what I mean?
For all of the districts, how is voted PEPAL spread across the state? There's 338 districts and 244 have voted PEPAL. 52 have the full $1.34. 46 are somewhere between 68 and 133. 78 are at 67 exactly, just like we are. And 68 are under 67%. So 98 districts have above 67 cents, and 78 have 67 cents. So it's just it's a feel for how that's being distributed. And also the income tax is not part of this. This is just the property tax portion of that.
Maybe on that, put Waterloo is here
Yeah.
or something at where it's
Including,
the
I would put including Waterloo
Okay.
Yeah.
after the 78.
Like
Little red,
at the-
a little red arrow. you
right,
are
to
here
see
is
that two people are above us.
Okay.
Yeah.
This gets into kind of the issue of why is PEPAL so necessary. Having 11 elementary buildings, 4 middle schools, 3 high schools, 2 pre-kindergarten centers, the ESC, Technology Center, Greenbrier, professional learning center, the stadiums, the athletic fields, and the bus garage complex. So there is a lot of area, a lot of parking lots, a lot of buildings and roofs, and we could kill with statistics. But
Does it make sense to say which Waterloo facilities are maintained through PEPAL, so that people understand that these are our specifics?
can
I
do
mean,
that.
I would hope they would get that, but we're not talking, or the Waterloo Community Schools facilities are maintained, just so that,
Let me see.
CSD facility.
Pointer, Elk Run, Bunger,
yep.
be out.
And then also maybe put on somehow word that it, for the removal of the schools, because that's a big point for people that have an Edison in their neighborhood, that it's gonna be taken down with these dollars.
Well, that was kind of addressed in the other purposes.
Right,
to-
right, but I'm
To
just,
remodel
yeah.
and. This is just stating the active buildings that we
Right.
have, that we have to continue to maintain them. But we'll look at that. Another part of this whole process is the high school reform issue of saying, well, how does this connect with that? Renewing PEPAL is a piece of the funding pie that will support updating and transforming our current facilities to accommodate and support career and technical education, or CTE, offerings for our students. It really goes hand in hand with what we're doing. We talked about that more at the bond steering committee. And there can be, and that's why as this goes out to you and it's an impression to you as a taxpayer from what you're hearing, please share those comments of how we can make this clearer. Because sometimes you look at this and you go, it could be a little different. So we can change this as you see fit. So why is PEPAL so important? It's an important part of the formula to ensure children in our district have the opportunity to learn in state-of-the-art buildings designed with their needs in mind. We were just talking about technology and how PEPAL does that. And if we didn't have that amount of money to infuse to the technology needs of the kids and have to take that out of the general fund, that just means the choice between personnel and technology, and that makes it a little more difficult. It gives us local control, a separate fund to use some of those dollars as we so choose. And it provides a cost-effective solution for proper maintenance of our buildings and grounds. Penny saved is a penny earned. That whole process, if you maintain it, you keep it up, your major repair jobs don't happen. Prevents more costly repairs in the future. So it's something that Marty and the operations people look at. Just as an example, right now, we just got through walking all of the buildings with every principal in the district saying, what do you need done? I may not see everything, but you do. Tell me what your building needs. So those things that are addressed early, preventative maintenance, takes care of the building in a much more satisfactory way.
I have a semantics thing.
Pardon?
We're talking about our. How about your? To connect to the community, your buildings. I don't know. You know, sometimes a little
For instance,
word.
with this one, PEPAL allows and ensures that instructional funds be used for the educational needs
Of your students.
of your students.
Of your students. It's kind of just that little word that says, you know, this isn't like us here in our, but your, you know, ownership. This is yours. I don't know. It's
And with this ability as well, having a 10-year cycle. I didn't hear that.
We got it.
Okay.
We got it.
I don't know. I don't know. Just the emotion that our and your create
Okay.
in a voter.
And with the ability of a 10-year cycle of approving that, it gives us a long-term plan to be able to put together and know that that money is coming in. It's not just the things that we know, but we also have to set aside contingencies for those unexpected things. So we want to continue to remind to vote when it is, time that the polls are open. But I appreciate your comments with this, as how we can better present it and explain it in the way that people will look at it and understand. So thank you. Kara, you can...
Do we know the value of our facilities, collective value?
It might be in the audit, I think.
Yeah, we have to be planning every year with insurance value and replacement value, and all that's on the schedule.
I guess my point is, the 2.8 million sounds like a lot, but if we related it to,
It's
this
is a wild guess, but I'm going to say 250 million.
all right.
I think is
So
the
if you
value
got
if you added all the
250
value of our
million,
building. Yeah.
that you need 1% a year for timely maintenance to prevent long-term deterioration. That might add some perspective to it, because it's, I'm not sure.
We'll use portions of it at different things, so, yeah, but mostly on the website, and referring people to that, and Tara's got a whole plan going, so do you want to talk about that
I
a
do.
little bit?
Thank you, Michael. And I took notes on everything you said here, and so our department will work with Michael to update the PowerPoint to reflect those suggestions. So thank you. And prior to tonight, we've been consulting with a lot of folks. Dr. Lindemann, I know, has talked to some of you and received input that way. We've also consulted other districts as well as Hawkeye. Kathy Flynn specifically, she's successfully been a part of, I believe, 11 elections. So a lot of good pointers and input from Kathy, as well as a voter serve list that she shared that was delineating voters who have actually taken part in the last 5 years in special elections in Waterloo. So we were able to really merge that list with the database from the city election office, similarly to target the active registered voters who are participating in special elections, which will help with the direct mailing to drop it down from 46,000 down to a more targeted group. Similarly, we've reached out to the media, our friends like Andrew Wind, and we are getting both paid and free coverage from the local media. So I have about an 8-pronged approach that I will quickly share with you. If you want more detail, I'll be happy to shoot this email to you, as well as to, it's fluid, so we can change, input, update as you see fit. As Michael has mentioned, the key that from talking to folks that we've learned is just to remind everybody, like Sue said, in bold red flashing, this is not doing anything to raise taxes, it's just reinstating existing funds. So we're sharing that message, not telling people how to vote, just sharing the details of the PEPL promotion in terms of what it's done and what it can do in the future decade. Through the internet, the entire month of June, we have the webpage that is also including frequently asked questions, as well as a link to Michael's PowerPoint and pictures of PEPL-funded projects. Those photos are then included in what will be this direct mailing, as well as some of the other, for example, when we go out and speak, you can print off some of the sheets from our webpage to pass out as handouts, which I'll be doing this week. Social media, from June 15th through the 29th, we'll have paid promotion on Facebook. On June 30th, the paid promotion will actually encourage people, today's the day, reminding you to vote. And we know that through a little bit of money, you can reach tens of thousands of people through social media like Facebook. The newspaper outlet of print being an ad that can remind people to vote on June 29th. And Andrew Wind has assured me that he's doing an advance piece on June 28th to remind folks about the details of the PEPL vote as well. So thank you, Andrew. Radio, from June 22nd through the 29th, we'll have some paid 15 and 30-second spots to talk about PEPL, and that will then culminate on June 30th with a reminder for people to vote through the key morning demo to target that 25 to 54-year-old soccer mom, which we know the moms are the ones who remind the dads to vote. So you kind of want to go after the women in this case. And then Dr. Lindemann will be appearing on June 29th for a live interview at 8:40, if you would like to hear her talk about PEPL. From June 22nd to the 29th, then, those 15 and 30-second spots will be in rotation, and then June 30th, it will kick to a full day of saturation, reminding people to vote. Direct mail will be this targeted mailer, and it's the merge of those two lists, active registered voters in Waterloo, and then those from Hawkeye who participated in previous special elections. And then it also delineates to school elections. And then we are combing through that list and taking out duplicates so that, you know, most households should not receive 2 mailings. It would just be the 1 mailing. So you can share it with the rest of your family. June 29th, we'll do a robocall to parents and staff, and it will be Dr. Lindemann's voice reminding everybody about the election on Tuesday, which would be the subsequent day. That will go to all staff as well as to parents, tailored individually to the audience. June 30th, the robocall will come out again from Dr. Lindemann to both parents and all staff, just reminding people to vote. And then through email and texting, we're going to be able to do the news release, which will go out on Monday. That will then hopefully pick up some more free coverage, a la the Courier and other news outlets. And then June 22nd, we'll email that news release to all parents, staff, partners in education to specifically detail the PEPL. It will include the JPEG of this same mailing that not everybody that will receive it via email will get in the mail. And then on June 23rd, we're going to do an Outlook invite to all staff so that if they're checking their email over the summer, they can click yes, accept, that they would then get that reminder come election day. And if they're not living in Waterloo, hopefully they can talk to friends and neighbors or folks in Waterloo just to remind people that the vote is important in terms of what we have done in the past decade using those PEPL dollars wisely. The all staff reminder and the parent emails, as well as sharing it with Hawkeye staff, will include 3 links: a sample ballot where you can see the same language that's shared right now on our webpage. It also has a link to find your polling place. You just enter your address and your zip, and then up will pop your polling place near you. And then the link back to the webpage for more information, where we're constantly updating and changing as information and suggestions come in. And then on June 29th, again, that email that goes to parents will include those same links. The Outlook invite will include those same links. So just a lot of opportunities to hopefully share, and overshare. And what we know, the joke in media is when people are complaining that they're sick of hearing from you, that's when you know the message has been received. So hopefully people won't get annoyed by what will culminate with a text alert on election day to their phone or to their, tablet. But the point being that we just want to make sure that we don't miss anybody, because it's summer and a lot of people might be out and about, and not everyone is as fervently checking their email as when it's 30 below wind chill. So we'll just remind you, some via snail mail, some via text alert, some when you're combing Facebook to see the latest pictures of your grandkids. And in the case of this Thursday, I'll be at Friendship Village talking to a lot of people through a women's and men's social, where I will share a handout similar to this. And similarly, Dr. Lindemann and the board members I know have been reaching out to try to secure some speaking engagements between now and June 30th to share that information. And then it will all hopefully result in a good turnout at the polls, and we will do everything we can in the meantime to just reinforce this information and update it to streamline the message more appropriately. So thanks for your input tonight in regard to the PowerPoint, and we'll get those changed.
I have one thing that I was thinking. Could we target our recent graduates and send them an email, because a lot of them are 18 and have never voted before?
Sure.
And if you targeted them, because I'm thinking like your son, my daughter, has never voted in an election before.
Sure.
And
Be a
so
good opportunity for
if
them.
you would use all the high school seniors and somehow, because we'd have all their contact information, just say, what has Waterloo Schools done for you? You're graduated, headed to college, da-da-da-da-da-da. Go vote so this can be for everybody else in the Waterloo Schools, or something, and give them the links and let them know exactly,
Right.
because a lot of those seniors are 18 and probably have never voted and would not vote in a school election. You know what I mean? Typically, they're targeted to vote in the, like a political election in November. But I'm just thinking we have that resource, and all those seniors, we have their stuff, that it wouldn't hurt to target them.
Definitely. Yeah, we can do that.
Great. That's a pretty lengthy list.
Yeah,
I don't
was gonna
think you
give the
missed-
flyover,
I
but
don't think
there's
you
no-
missed much.
It's pretty detailed.
is.
I had
And
to share
I-
it, so.
No, it's great.
Can we go back to the webpage that the public looks at for the district webpage right now, so we can look at it?
Can you X out of the
Yeah.
PowerPoint?
There you go.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and I'll forward this information to everyone I can who lives in the Waterloo School District, because I support the extension of PEPL, because I really do think it's the best way to maintain the buildings we have. I think Lyle talked about it before, that the district actually voted down PEPL for a little while, and I think that was very much a penny-wise and pound-foolish decision, because it caused a great deal of significant damage to our buildings that cost much more money in the long run. And so I think the community, fortunately, reversed that and reinstated PEPL, and I think the district has spent that money wisely in the time since. And so I definitely think it's worthwhile and support this completely, and we'll work to get the word out to people to vote for it. I understand the district can't tell voters how to vote, but I do think as board members we can. We're not district employees, and I mean it's and so I definitely think it's a worthwhile thing to extend the PEPL.
And to that point, I
Yeah,
should
fine.
mention, this mailing has been reviewed by the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board, as well as all of our materials have been vetted through them. So that's one important note that we will share.
And now on the webpage, I think it would be helpful if you put the time the polls are open.
Oh, yes, good point.
You just have vote Tuesday, June 30th, so put
7 a.m.
7
to
a.m.
8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Do you have the locations on there?
Yeah. There's a link
There, yeah, I think she said
on
that
the other one that's,
there will be a link.
one that shows where you can put your address in.
That's the link that will be that will be emailed directly to everyone, but we can add that on here
I
for
would
sure.
add it on here.
Uh-huh.
Is the ballot out?
yeah.
Do
Terry,
know?
you
The
can also
ballot.
vote at the courthouse.
Okay. So
And you can also do absentee, so
Yeah.
we've included the link on here. Your ballot, here's the ballot language itself.
okay. Just so there's not confusion with Cedar Falls, because that is
Right.
an increase in taxes, and this isn't. This is just extending the same tax rate. Will they look different? I mean, I'm imagining there might be some confusion from people who think it's the same thing. Do we know what is Cedar Falls going for, the dollar amount? Is that out yet?
Well, if they were a Waterloo voter and went to the polls, then they would only see.
No, they
the-
wouldn't see it, but I'm just curious as to what.
And
I wanna
on
say
here,
around
Tara,
2.
where it's in red, where you have ballot request form.
You mean their bond issue?
I
Yeah,
would
their bond
put
issuance.
30 million, I
absentee
think,
ballot
Is
isn't
it okay?
request form.
And I
Okay.
don't know if that
30 or
says up
35.
to whatever property tax rate, but
really isn't a lot.
Because if you
$1.04
think you're
or
just gonna go pick,
Right.
get a ballot and
to
go
say to
walk in
people
with
it's
your ballot,
zero,
you can't do
yeah.
Cedar
I think just in conclusion
it
on
just
that,
gives it
Michael mentioned, if you have other things, or if you're looking at this and you say, oh, we should include a link, or the wording is confusing, or add an extra word, make sure that you email it either, I wouldn't email it directly to Tara, honestly, because she's kind of manning the website, and honestly, we've probably changed, 30 things, and some of them even this afternoon. So it is a work in progress. Sometimes you wait until it's perfect to put it up, but then you never get there either. And so, the more people that looked at it, it's actually better and continues to get better. So please, feel free. We appreciate your comments and keep them coming.
And then on the homepage, starting on Monday, this window right here,
Yes,
it will be what you see here.
great.
Got it.
This square here will jump to here. And so then anyone who comes to our homepage, this right here will be
Yeah.
stagnant.
Got it.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Tara.
Yes,
And
thank
obviously, we have every bit of the editor in us this evening. So we appreciate you listening to all that. And as Jane said, if board has more suggestions, et cetera, we'll get them to you, Tara. Thanks.
I just wanted to ask other board members, though, as far as the one PowerPoint mentioned the high school reform. I don't know how wise it is to even bring that up in this.
I would delete it.
Well, well, we certainly can review that. That has been a significant question that I have been asked. People said, is this the high school bond vote? And so, if we want to change wording, I think it would be,
But we're plastering it, this is PEPAL, no new taxes, so
we can,
it's not
This
the
is,
high school
yeah,
bond
extension
vote.
of
Right.
existing,
I mean, this is what's
PEPAL.
existing. I just
Well-
think you throw that.
it's the number one question that I get asked, and so we either leave it off or and assume that we've answered it, or, so we can do whatever. I think we'll have to make sure that,
Or explicitly state this
at
is not a
this-
high school.
this
At
is
this
not-
level, I doubt that it completely funds the maintenance of our buildings. The main message to me is, it maintains the current tax rate for maintaining school buildings and equipment. And I think, to me, it would be important to know that about 75% of that is going to be used to maintain the school buildings themselves, such as roofs, windows, and heating systems. And the other 25% is to replace computers
Technology.
as they become obsolete. To me, that's the essence of the message, and I think everything else kind of,
Because high school reform,
Yeah.
I think we're targeting more, we're changing programming. This has nothing to do with programming.
yeah.
And you're talking about remodeling and doing all those things, and that's not maintenance.
I might be wrong, but I mean, I can't believe you can maintain $250 million worth of buildings for 1% a year. That would be a low number in terms of normal maintenance. So my point is, I think it's legitimate that this money is completely consumed by simply the maintenance of the buildings
Buildings.
we have.
Yeah.
And not muddying the waters with anything else, but
Yeah.
just what it's being used
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else? All right.
Aren't you
I'm
glad you
done.
asked?
Yes, it's good.
I'm glad you asked.
Lively discussion.
I
It's good.
earlier said, I think that'll be a real quick agenda item, so I missed that.
You never
I'm not-
know.
No, that's good, and we got lots of good feedback.
That's a good point.
Lots of good feedback.
All right, well, then we'll move on to item L, which is on page 74. And the motion is that the Board of Education approve the above resolution to prepare for the sale and issuance of $5,085,000 in school infrastructure sales, service and use tax revenue bond anticipation project notes, Series June 2015.
Also move.
And a second?
Second?
And with discussion, I will ask that, Michael Coughlin, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Again, this is a follow-up to the practice that we have been basically carrying the cash flow of the SAVE fund as we have been completing the last of our semi-major projects of Hoover and the bus garage. Instead of doing something earlier, we waited until it was kind of finished. We had the cash flow in the general fund to do that. Now that it's upon completion, that we can get this, get the general fund reimbursed for that. That's what this borrowing is doing, to reimburse the general fund for money that it is extended to the SAVE account while we have been finishing those projects. So we do have a meeting set up for June 15th to do the final. This is another step in the process of saying that you're aware of this going on. We've gone through the process of all of the financial advisor and the legal counsel, getting everybody on board to complete this. And now the board is saying, yes, we're going ahead with it.
What kind of commission does Piper Jaffray get?
I don't have the details of that yet.
Nice one.
Yeah.
A nice one, I'm quite sure. So this will take care of the completion of these improvements at Hoover
Yes,
and for the bus garage.
And the
And
bus
this will
garage.
take all of it.
yes.
Anything else for Michael?
What's the duration?
2 years.
2 years.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, thanks.
And it's reimbursing those expenditures that are out of the 14-15 general fund, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Anything further for Michael? This motion requires a roll call vote this evening. And so with that, are we ready to vote? Is everyone, anybody have any? Okay. With that, I would like to ask that I will start on this side. So Sue Flynn,
I'm going to abstain.
okay? Mike Young,
Yes.
Andrea Sparks,
Yes.
Lyle Schmidt,
Yes.
chair votes yes, with one abstention. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, and then we'll move on to item M, which is on page 75. And that recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the resolution declaring an official intent under Treasury Regulation 1.150-2 to issue debt to reimburse the school district for certain original expenditures paid in connection with specific projects.
Also move.
And a second?
Second?
Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Michael Coughlin for discussion and some background.
In the process of putting all of this together, it may be to the point that this motion is not necessary, depending on the vehicle that we use. This has an issue of timing of how far we can go back into our expenses. And this particular motion only goes back 60 days. Well, our 5 million was way before 60 days. So as those issues become clear on the final sale, this motion may not be necessary. You can still approve it, but it may not be necessary.
And what happens if it's not necessary?
It's
Does
just
it just become
negated.
negated, null and
Yeah.
void?
Yeah, there's no effect on the financing vehicle that we have, so it wasn't necessary if that's the way that we go.
Right, we don't have to rescind it or
No.
put it back on. Okay.
It would only apply to a specific vehicle of financing, so if it turns out the other way, it's just not necessary.
Got it.
Any further questions for Michael then? This also requires a roll call vote. So I would ask that, I will start down here again with Sue Flynn.
And I'm abstaining again. I will not be here on the 15th for these votes, and I don't want to endorse something that I haven't seen the final version of.
Okay, great. Mike Young,
Yes.
Andrea Sparks,
Yes.
Lyle Schmidt,
Yes.
Shanley McNally, chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Michael, for all that. And we're going to keep on with you by moving on to our monthly internal financial information, which again is for information only in tonight's packet, but it's Exhibit N on page 76.
I really wanted to give you all new reports today, because we just got done with May. So we're kind of moving past in a very quick fashion, just as school gets done and a lot of things happen in the last couple of weeks. The last few weeks of the financial picture also just kind of go full speed. So this is just a reference to the end of April and where everything is at. I'm going to try and get May's done quickly, and I am putting out all of my projection of what the end of June is going to look like. So we have all of that happening in the next 3 weeks, because we write all the summer paychecks for our teachers, and basically, except for some bills that we don't know whether they're coming in yet on the timeline, we'll pretty much have numbers. But those are the ones that we don't, and the biggest issue with that is tuition through special ed. how that all happens. And since it's a big dollar amount, it's really hard to get that final number until we know that. But everything else kind of falls into place. And as you've also been aware of how we are now in a consortium with River Hills rather than what we used to do, that's a whole new synopsis of how we have to wait for numbers. So in one regard, we have 95% of the numbers, but the 5% what we don't have are very significant. So, and all of these things are happening at once. So, in page 77, 78, 79 is all of the cash balances of all the different funds by month. And again, we've expanded these in the last couple of months to just give you some picture of how we look at trends and how things go from month to month. But there's also things that happen in the last couple of months of how we look at how money is spent out of what fund and what fund can carry that money. And even with some of the things that came out of the legislation today on how some of the carryovers are going to be affected, that's some decisions we have to make within the next couple of weeks of saying, are we going to use it this way or are we going to use it this way? And it will have a determination, if it stays alive and doesn't get vetoed, of what kind of balance we carry and whether we can even use it the next year. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts in that legislation that nobody quite knows until the governor signs it, what it's all going to be. But trying to understand all of that and put everything in its best place is the challenge that comes in the last couple of months. Page 80 is the revenues by all the different source codes, the local, the state, and the federal in the general fund, and then all the other funds in page 81 and 82. You can see that money comes in on a very sporadic basis, so we really have to look at annual totals and projections and pull all of that together. Page 83 and 84 is looking at object codes, so it's salary, benefits. How are we spending our money in those type of areas, not just instruction and special ed and operations? Break it out into how much do we spend in salaries, how much do we spend in salaries for paras and special ed paras and administrators and teachers and so on, and all the extra pay that goes along with it. You look at the first category on 83 and the salaries. You think we have 4 or 5 or 6 categories of salaries, and there's actually about 30. And then those are all broken out by function areas and project areas. So all of those expand by double, triple, and quadruple based on how they are funded, where the funding comes from, and what the purpose of whether they're special ed or regular or a project, so forth. So then you get into the benefits and the purchase services and overhead, transportation, all the different funds, for all the different object codes for the general fund. And it really is a big part of our job, is looking at that and seeing how it goes from month to month and is it meeting our budget and so on. And that's then what we transfer into a projection for what can we afford next year, and doing our budget projections and putting everything in place as we turn the page into a new year very quickly here. On page 86 and 87, and I see the print shop didn't do it in color this time, this is by the function area, the instructional area, what kind of program it is. So within that, how many salaries are under regular instruction. You kind of see the categories that go under that. So again, all of the things that we're looking at, and through this particular time, we've spent 71% of the budget, in the general fund. Last year at this time on 87, we spent 72% of our budget. So that's the kind of trends we look at to understand, are we on course? Where do we see differences in some of the line items? And that's what I have to spend time looking at. Then we also get into all of the object codes for the different funds, activity management, the SAVE and PEPL and lunch fund, our debt service where we make our bond payments. So there's a lot of different accounts that come into this. Central printing, again, is its own fund, again, to see how it is making do with its own resources. And then the last page, which I was kind of thrilled to see on page 91, the general fund is now showing the highest cash balance in April that it has in the last 4 years. So that's a good sign. We still have to finish the year and the timing of how all the bills are paid to see how that's going to come in. But that's why I do trends of multiple years, to not just look at what number, but look at what's happening as compared to years past. And you have management and SAVE and PEPL. You can kind of see how we have used some of those in how we've done different projects. So it's, again, as you look at that, you'll probably see some changes and adjustments in the last couple of months. You'll see May, but then June will basically be 3 months tucked into one. So there'll be a lot there, and you'll probably see that in August, because we will have our audit scheduled right after the 15th of September when the certified annual report is due. So all of that's done. So when they come in, they can actually audit a finished books rather than help us complete it and then have adjustments. So a lot of work ahead for the business office and HR and Jane's office as we deal with closing the financial picture of the district.
On page 77, the fourth line down, loan to other funds, shouldn't the 5 million be on that line? No, but that's been ongoing.
Okay, where are you at, Lyle?
I'm on page 77,
Okay.
general fund. It says loans to other funds. We've had that. I mean, we're paying back that 5 million.
We've borrowed that much money to the SAVE fund to this point.
But shouldn't that be, under general fund, shouldn't that be on the line loans to other funds?
And where is it?
The fourth line down.
That's what it's on.
But there's no 5 million there.
We started the year with 3.8 million, way over on the left.
Yeah.
And we've added another 1.2 million. So there's the 5 million.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
the total is.
But
Alright, so
June is basically the beginning balance.
got it. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
That's why the 60 days wasn't going to apply to us under that vehicle, because our expenses go back a couple of years, how we have been supporting the SAVE fund.
Okay.
Well, good luck, Michael. I know it's going to be, the next 3 weeks, there's going to be a lot of pencils rolling around in the business office. So we appreciate that. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report.
Well, along that theme, I was just going to say that very often I am asked, now that school is out, if it's busier or relieving, or, you know, what our schedules are like. And I often said that it just really depends because we're as busy, but it's just different type of work. So for example, right now we, all day today, we had our administrator retreat, which is a series of multiple days. And so we had all our administrators in the district in for a full day of professional development and planning. And I think honestly, they would love to have a regular day of school because it is exhausting to do that type of work and digging in. Sometimes that mental work is just as much. And I think the thing that is probably most interesting to me is that this is the first year of our teacher leadership and compensation package, and so we had all of our teacher leaders there for a portion of the day, and it was really amazing to me the significance of the sheer numbers of people in the room, because sometimes the teacher leaders, teachers will think that, you know, I think sometimes the public thinks that the teacher leaders, the people who are hired to do teacher leaders, are only working with the teachers, and that really is not true, because sometimes they're a little bit of a liaison between, they're working with teachers, they're working with principals, they're sharing what they've seen all year, and they're helping to plan for improvements. And so that's really under the direction of Dr. McNulty, and so he and his team have worked really amazingly hard. And just for fun, they started out the day with a video of everything that the Ed Services staff does, and it was really done in, you know, a comedy routine, and it was just a fun way, and it was fun to hear all the laughter from the administrators. And so I'll share that with you. Hopefully you'll laugh as hard as we did, but it was great. So just a really great day. So one of the other things that we're working on right now that school is out is just really poring over data and getting a good chance to see where we are, you know, looking at all of our metrics, in addition to Iowa assessment data, which is coming back in. You know, right now we're looking at credits earned, we're looking at grades, student attendance, final counts, teacher attendance, final counts, end of the year scores for reading and math, and, you know, a variety of things. So again, it's just as busy, if not busier, but it's just a different kind of work at this point. And the reason that that's so important to do is because it really gives a good feel for what worked, what didn't work, what we need to change, and if there's planning that needs to be done, now is the time to do it. So it's been really, really busy, but good things to do. Tomorrow night we have a committee. I have mentioned many times in my superintendent's report that we have a group of community members who are helping us out, business leaders who are helping us out with looking at high school reform, and looking at the existing facilities and what type of facilities would support that type of programming. And so anyway, we have another meeting tomorrow night, and I'm really looking forward to that because it's just been a really great group. And finally, I just would be remiss if I didn't mention the legislative budget that has been in the news. Matter of fact, I just printed out Andrew had done an article on what Mr. Petit, Andy Petit, and I thought about the recent settlement. And so I guess I would just mention one more time, I think it's just kind of a double-edged sword, because I think we were really excited and appreciative of the fact that it wasn't 1.25 or worse, 0, which I think some of us were, you know, wondering that whether it was actually going to be 0. So we were appreciative of that, but also apprehensive about the settlement that did come, because some of it, you know, a significant portion is coming to us as one-time dollars. I've been visiting with legislators and really, I was begging, and now I guess it's too late, but really asking them to set the fiscal year for 17, because that would be so much more helpful if we knew. And I know I read an article today where the governor was, I think he said he was very disappointed that they didn't get that done by the end. And I think we are all in that same case. So, you know, we're happy for what we do have, and planning and addressing what we don't have. So lots of work ahead on that, and I think that's it for tonight.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Well, let's just keep on to our right here then. Andrea Sparks, that's information from board members.
Okay, well, mine is just, you know, it's summer now, and I know the kids are out there riding their bikes, and please be careful. Cross at the crosswalks and watch out for cars so you can make it back to school next year for us, okay?
Thank you. Lyle Schmidt?
When will we see the assessment data?
Very shortly. We have to certify the data, I believe, on June 19th, so we won't have anything until after that. I believe the state needs approximately 1 or 2 weeks to do the final prep, so it should be, you know, I would say best case scenario late June, and, you know, worst case scenario sometime in July. It's been historically that we have gotten some of it on about the 20th, late July, but I think it sounds like they're on a better track this year, so You know, it'll be definitely this summer, but I couldn't give you a date at this point in time.
But we have, the preliminary data is here.
We have all student data. Yep. And
I
that's
guess-
what I've shared that. I've shared what we had for all student data, but I have not shared the FAE data because we don't have that yet. But
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mike Young?
No report.
Sue Flynn?
I would just encourage everyone to get out to a softball or a baseball game. There's beautiful evenings, and both East and West have great teams, and just a lot of fun on a nice night to sit there and watch a ball game. And then also, I would just want to congratulate, I saw the report of the scholarship dollars that all of our seniors got, and it's just amazing. So a job well done to the class of 2015, and hopefully 2016 can top that number.
It's great. It's a good gauntlet to throw down for that. So, our next regular board meeting, we're on our summer schedule now, so our next board meeting will not be until July 13th, and it will be at the 5 o'clock time. We also have 2 special meetings in between there. We will be doing a special meeting next Monday, the 15th, and also a review and evaluation and goal-setting session on June 23rd. But the next time you'll see us all back here will be July 13th. So without anything further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.